Welcome back, everybody, to the Bremen Regional Championship, where we thought we'd bring back Ben Kiriakou onto the casting desk. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Managed to have a little bit of a break. Go around, have a chat to some people, see how they're doing. And a lot of people that we know from this community, names that you know and love, people like Marcus Stadter, uh, Eric Rios that we saw in previous round, uh, players like Alex Gomez, all doing really well, having great tournament performances so far and having a great time. So it was really good to catch up with some of those players. I understand it was a great match that we had in the last round as well, albeit slightly quicker than some other rounds were. But what a spectacle that must have been to see Eric in action.
Exactly. So Eric is now 3-0, and on your screen we can actually see all the 3-0s that are currently in the tournament. So there's Eric at the top there, and as from your reconnaissance earlier there, Ben, Marcus Statter 3-0 as well. So maybe we'll see him a little bit later. Luca Luzognoli, Giovanni Tonelli, Richard Hodge from the UK, Menelik Collymore. And then we've got for you for our round 4 here, the two more there, Sean Martens and Frederik Nielsen. And obviously there's a few more 3-0s there, a lot of which you may recognize. Giulio Tarlo down there as well, who was the runner-up at the Lille Regional, who lost narrowly to Thomas Corvui in the final. So we've got a lot of great players at 3-0 already, but obviously not everyone's going to be undefeated, and we're going to see who comes out 4-0 from these two players as well.
Absolutely. And we get to see some players that we don't get to showcase all that often. Here we have Sean Martens here from the Netherlands, going to be coming in with that 2022 European Internationals top 64 achievement. Nothing to sniff at. It's very difficult tournament stacked with all of the best players from around Europe and, of course, the rest of the international community. So, very difficult tournament to place well in. So, props to Sean for being able to make it to that stage of the tournament, of course. And on our other side, we have, of course, Frederik Nielsen, a fairly new player to VGC, actually. We were having a chat to him before the match. He is new to coming into VGC, not too many expectations for the tournament, but comes from the Hearthstone community. So a player that we hope to see, converting completely and doing more in the Pokemon community, I'm sure. Both players at 3-0. So, they're obviously having really good tournament performances. And, if you know them at home, if you're tuning in and watching them here, come and support them. Vote for them in the poll that's up on your screen now. Join us in helping showcase these players off to as many people as possible.
Yeah, Netherlands versus Denmark, Sean Martens versus Frederik Nielsen. So two players with not a huge amount of achievements compared to some of our other players, but as always, we always try to like hone out and find out these players who are maybe more up and coming, because as soon as you're going 3-0 in a regional tournament with all those players that we've seen at 3-0, there's definitely something good about these players, or at least their teams.
Yeah, exactly. So, going to be great to showcase these players and what they're bringing, and see what decisions that they've made. I mean, we know the metagames formed of a lot of Seishi and Kyogre. We saw the sudden matchups coming around, but these players that aren't necessarily so much in the spotlight always have a different perspective. I feel from what we see from the usual crowd, so to speak, and that's a great thing to be able to look at, because in coming at the tournament with a different perspective, we get different games to cast.
We do. And this is going to be a very different game also, because we've got a Zacian Calyrex Shadow on the left on Sean's side, and a Zacian Yveltal team, which is a really unique combination that we have not seen very much of on Frederik's end. So we've got, with the Yveltal, we've got the Double Dark with the Incineroar, got some Whimsicott, Gastron for maybe that slower option, and what I would expect to probably be a Defiant Thunderous maybe on Frederik's end. Whereas on Sean's side, we've also got the Zacian, also a really fast restricted in that Calyrex Shadow, but the Blastoise, Thunderous, Rillaboom, and the Incineroar.
And, Sean's using a composition that we've seen quite regularly. It's quite a tried and tested composition with Zacian and Cali Shadow. Plays a little bit more defensively, wants to switch around a little bit, using that Blastoise, which is a great Pokemon, by the way. It's, I really like to see it, because it can support with things like Yawn, but it can also go for its G-Max Cannonade and do lots of damage and leave that residual damage on the field.
And I'm glad you said that, because here it is, Ben. Next to that good dog Zacian, that coming out onto the fray here. And it's got a great matchup into the Yveltal, assuming you're not maybe Life Orb Heatwave, which this Yveltal could very well be, as it does seem to be like a decent Dynamax option on Frederik's end, because you've maybe got the Thunderous and the Yveltal as maybe the only two ones you're kind of really keen to bring. But as you're saying, Ben, this Blastoise has probably got a lot of options, and if it doesn't completely go down to one max move from an Yveltal, a Yawn into that stock could be really key.
It could be, and Yawn's so powerful in a Dynamax format as we see the first Dynamax coming onto the field, because you only get 3 turns of Dynamax, and if 2 of them are taken up, it's not really getting the maximum amount of value. But speaking of value, we'll see how much of this Yveltal's going to do in this match as it goes for its Dynamax factor.
Okay, Helping Hand comes out of the Blastoise, so like completely getting around any like taunt shenanigans that Whimsicott might have. So Tailwind comes out, going for the speed control. Yveltal's going to be moving first here. Is it a Max Flare? No. Max Darkness comes out into the Blastoise, it looks like. How much is that going to do? It's absolutely the one-shot. So it's surely a Life Orb on this Yveltal here to be able to get that KO, I would expect here. Which we do see, actually. So maybe there also could be that Max Flare still, because with that Max Flare, you can get the Oko on some Zacians, but not before Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade, doing a huge chunk of damage to the Yveltal and just getting the one-shot.
Yeah, getting knocked out straight away. Wait, okay, right. So here we've got a trade. You've got a trade of the Blastoise on Sean's side, and Frederik takes that Pokemon out. But Zacian manages to take out Frederik's Yveltal. But Sean still hasn't used his max yet, and so I think really overall it's a trade in Sean's favour, because he's still got the max available. There's still some good things that Sean is able to do. Frederik, though, does have the Tailwind on his side of the field, so he's going to be able to pressure with speed control. We've seen the Helping Hand from the Blastoise. Maybe we'll see it from the Whimsicott, and certainly with Zacian coming onto the field and the Thunderous coming onto the field for Sean, there could be some big attacks coming in.
I think so, and whether Dynamax or not, Behemoth Blade is doing double damage to that. So, especially now Whimsicott has already got the Tailwind up, we also maybe see Whimsicott commonly carry like some helping out moves that help its allies do more damage. Either that Fake Tears, which is quite devastating versus an Yveltal, or maybe a Helping Hand. So if that Thunderous was going to go for a Dynamax on Sean's end, Helping Hand Behemoth Blade may even have knocked it out. But Sean decides to keep that in the back for now and switches back into his Calyrex Shadow, as we do see that Helping Hand from the Whimsicott come out, possibly into that Calyrex Shadow. And if it does that Focus Sash, it is going to be able to cling on and go for another attack next turn. However, the Tailwind is still up, so let's see how much this Behemoth Blade does to this Calyrex. Yep, it's a lot of damage, and it's the Focus Sash.
Yeah, Focus Sash are really key there, because it's one of those items that forces you to have to do like 500% damage or 401% damage if you think about it in percent of health that you have to deal. And it allows the Calyrex to come in effectively almost without taking damage if you squint a little bit and don't think about it too hard. In return, though, the Zacian on Frederik's side of the field has taken so much damage from the Behemoth Blade on Sean's Zacian. I think that's going to pay dividends in the endgame here.
Yeah, I really like Sean's play to preserve that Thunderous, because going into this turn now, Frederik can only take a KO on either the Zacian or the Calyrex Shadow here, which means that Sean's able to go on the offensive and potentially take out the Zacian on Frederik's end, which makes his Thunderous a lot safer. However, Frederik preserves his Zacian, brings out the Incineroar instead, which is a great switch into these two Pokemon, as his Whimsicott goes for the Moonblast, still in that Tailwind, and can get the KO on that Calyrex Shadow.
And there's definitely something to say about your moves making sense together as well as apart. We see the Behemoth Blade coming into that Incineroar, taking that like a champ and getting that Intimidate on the field, but also at the same time, you bring in the Intimidate on Frederik's side of the field, you stop the physical Pokemon on Sean's side of the field from doing as much damage, and then you knock out the Pokemon that isn't affected by Intimidate, so it all kind of ties in together into a really good turn.
Yeah, Sean does go for the Behemoth Blade into what was the Zacian, which was on such lower health, but can't help if he'd gone for like the Sacred Sword, which we're presuming He has, because most Zacians do, or like some sort of fighting move. That Incineroar would have been taking a lot of damage on the way in. But if it was maybe the Thunderous coming in, then obviously would have taken a little bit more damage from the Steel move. But maybe that was just a slight missed opportunity for go for something a little bit more spicy. But now the Thunderous is coming back in, and there is no Zacian on the field this time. However, the Incineroar has already come in, so it's not being able to activate the Defiant that is likely on this Thunderous.
No, indeed. And it is, however, a good chance to go for that Dynamax, as we're seeing now. Will be the Thunderous, as Zacian isn't able to go for a Dynamax. And I think it's an opportunity to set up that Airstream, knock out the Whimsicott as the Tailwind ends, and get that Airstream speed boost. What that's going to do is put Sean in a position where he has the speed advantage going into the next turns. And, you know...
Oh!
Okay! Maybe it's going to have to be Thunderous versus the World, because that Charm coming out onto the Zacian is going to stop it to doing really any damage, because it takes it to -2 stages of decreased attack. As this Max Airstream comes out onto the Whimsicott, takes it down to its Focus Sash. Yeah, Whimsicott still on the field, will be able to launch a Tailwind next turn. And, of course, Incineroar still has an opportunity to act.
Oh, the
Burning Jealousy, oh my god! Absolutely taking no prisoners, I think, would probably be the best way to say it. Thunderous and Zacian both having that speed boost from the Max Airstream this turn, both getting burned. And that combination of physical damage suppression against these two physical attackers is so key for Frederik. One important thing about Burn is it doesn't care about critical hits. It still reduces the damage, unlike Stat Drop. So not even a critical hit, I don't think, can save Sean's damage output now.
No, I don't think so. But Frederik's Pokemon, it could be a little bit too late at the moment, because Zacian has such low health. It's only Incineroar that really has any like health at this point. And even with a Tailwind, Zacian and Thunderous are still going to be able to outspeed it. So even though Sacred Sword is not going to do a very little amount of damage, maybe a Max Knuckle can come out of here, boost the damage a little bit more, and still going into further turns, do more damage, because now everything seems to just be in Zacian range right now.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know about you, David. I don't really know my -2 burnt Zacian calcs very well at all. So a little bit hard to say, but this Flare Blitz recoil might actually be enough to knock out the Incineroar from this turn, as the Zacian does get knocked out. So no chipping that any of Frederik's Pokemon down with Zacian. And there we see it was enough to pick up the knockout with that recoil. Now it's Thunderous versus Zacian and Whimsicott. Well, the Whimsicott's not going to do anything, is it?
Not a whole lot. I mean, we've seen it has Moonblast, but this Zacian is now in, and with its Tailwind, I believe it's probably still faster than this Thunderous, even though it's had I think it's airstreamed at least once, and then it's gone for the Knuckle.
Yes.
So it's actually still going to be able to outspeed and do a huge chunk of damage. It's possibly not going to get the KO, but maybe the Moonblast as well, it could. But it's looking really close here, and we'll have to see where this Thunderous ends up targeting.
Yeah, and I think, well, with the Helping Hand, I think it could be enough. We see the Behemoth Blade coming into play here. Boosted by the Helping Hand. It's tight, I'm sure, but there we go. We do see the knockout. So Frederik taking game 1 of this set. Both players at 3-0 and 1-0 to Frederik. So we'll have to see how Sean can adapt and change up his game plan slightly to go into game 2, especially, I think, with that Burning Jealousy being revealed from Frederik. I think it really affects how Sean can change his game plan to suit, because it's one of those big things. You can't just click the Airstream button in front of Incineroar like you usually would. I think that's going to make a big impact on the next game.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how Frederik's Pokemon have like been put together here, because usually with Whimsicott, you've got like you need your Tailwind, you need like some sort of attacking move, maybe an Energy Ball or a Moonblast. Helping Hand's pretty common, but there's that third move that seems to like vary quite a lot on Whimsicott. So you maybe got Switcheroo, you've maybe got a Taunt or something, but he chooses the Charm, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously it's just a double Intimidate straight away, and especially on a Zacian, which is probably the worst nightmare for any Yveltal, as we saw there. I think if we saw that move first rather than a Tailwind in the game 1, that it would have been an even more dominant performance.
Yeah.
So I feel like Frederik played well, but he could have even played even better.
Yeah, the other question mark I've got is whether I suppose it wouldn't have made a difference in the so much, but if the charm came out and it was a max airstream rather than a max darkness, and then the next turn it was a helping hand max flare into the Zacian, maybe that would have been a completely different game as well. You think if the charm went off onto the Zacian, the Yveltal survives, gets a max airstream. Now it's faster than the Zacian on Sean's side of the field, and maybe that gives enough of an advantage to push that Yveltal through the rest of the game. But Frederik proving that he has enough power control and targeted power control in to deal with the Pokemon on Sean's side of the field pretty effectively overall.
But what I think is worth mentioning, though, is that like the Incineroar revealed both Flare Blitz and Burning Jealousy. So we've had the double fire move. So not using Burning Jealousy as the offensive like fire move here, but just as like it's maybe instead of the parting shot, which we haven't seen yet, or maybe instead of the dark move, just so that you can able to get those burns. And again, and this is another move on a Pokemon that we've seen that is could be just an adjustment to this Defiant Thunderous meta that we keep seeing as an increase.
Yeah, as well as Shedinja's been popular. We saw it in Lille, in Europe. There's definitely quite a few French players here in Bremen this weekend. So from a community perspective, Burning Jealousy, pretty good against those sort of teams.
Yes, Ally Switch does not want to face Burning Jealousy whatsoever. So, an excellent move to just be able to click very easily. And Airstreams is also very common, and just any sort of Zacian switching, you don't even have to target the right slot. Burning Jealousy, you're going to get a burn on it, and that stays there for the rest of the game. So, I really like that option, especially when you've got Flare Blitz as well, to be able to have that offense and get that really crucial KO on that Zacian in the end game there, which I think would have been fairly close.
Yeah, I think so. Like David, what are you thinking in terms of switch ups from Sean in game two? Because when you've got a Calyrex Shadow facing down in a Veltal, it's not really usually a happy time. And but there are other Pokemon in the field. The Veltal went down pretty quickly. So what do you think in terms of adjustments that Sean can make going into this game too?
Yeah, so even though like he like preserved the Thunderous to the end, I feel like he got just really caught off guard by the Burning Jealousy. So at least he knows that now going in. He also knows a little bit more about the Yveltal being Life Orb, and that his Blastoise just drops to it. So I'd wonder if we see maybe a little bit of switch up. Zacian I still think is a really good, decent lead, but
Mhm.
maybe if we saw the Incineroar, just a bit of fake out pressure into the Whimsicott,
Yeah.
yes, it could get a helping hand around it, but that still would mean you'd be able to pick off the Whimsicott before it got up a Tailwind. So, what we're going to go to very soon, though, is we're actually going to have a look at the countries in attendance at Bremen, just to see a little bit of like the spread of the nationalities here. Especially now we've got someone from the Netherlands and Denmark on here, so we've already got quite a varied populace. So as you can see on the graph, like we're in Germany, 43% of the people are Germans here.
Mm.
So
Yep.
and which does make a lot of sense.
Yep, representing their country, and of course behind that, Great Britain taking up 12%. Quite a few Brits coming across. It's one of the easier places to get to for us, and yeah, really nice to see some of our friends, at least in the UK community, coming over and representing. But of course, there's also the French contingent coming off a high in Lille. It's quite a lot of high standings, I think, in the Lille Regional Championships last weekend from the French. I think they collectively did pretty well in the overall event.
I think they did. And so as you can see then we've got from the Netherlands, Italy and Spain, we've have about 6 7% of the country too. I don't know how this compares to like other places around the world. But and then we've got a little bit of Austria, Finland, and we've got Portugal. And but still 10% of here are not even from those countries. So a really wide variety of people, which just kind of goes to show like half the enjoyment of like actually coming to these events is you're able to meet up with these people from all over the world and
Yeah.
like make friends who you otherwise just wouldn't ever see. And like we've all got Pokemon in common, so I think people come for the Pokemon originally and then just stay for the friendship.
Stay for the friendship, stay for the community. It's corny, but it's kind of true. It's
Thanks,
kind
man.
of true. I definitely agree. We've been in the Pokemon community for quite a number of years now, and it's one of those places where it is an international community, and especially in the European international championships and other international championships, they are exactly what they say on the team. You get a much different skew of different players that come to these events. And of course, speaking of events, there's quite a few coming up for the rest of the season. We have in Europe the Milan special event. That's next weekend. We've had quite a few regionals, quite a few weekends, and there is lots of Pokemon to play.
There is. And I think the players are ready to get into game 2 very shortly now, so we are going to get in there. But as you say, Ben, there is plenty more events if you are still looking for those championship points to be able to earn your World's invite. Or maybe it's just to, like, get more than you did last time. And last time might have been 2019 because of all the world situation going on, but that's still the time before. So, and both excellent formats, may I say, too. But we're surely going to get into game 2, where we probably see a little switch up of the leads. I would say. I mean, Velta was a really nice lead for Frederik, but even though he lost it turn 1, it seemed to do exactly what he needed it to do. Because looking at what he had in the back, which was the Incineroar, the Zacian, and the Whimsicott, none of that really wanted to face down that Blastoise. So he was really good at targeting exactly what he wanted to get rid of, got rid of it, and then was able to just clean up with the rest.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that, didn't want to take Gastrodon to the matchup, because that's the other way to sort of try and deal with Blastoise. Put a Gastrodon in front of it, and then it can't use its water moves, and maybe it's not the water moves that Frederik is scared of, maybe it's all of the rest of the moves, as we were saying before. Quite a versatile Pokemon. You can use it in Gmax, you can use it normally, it's still got some options. One adjustment that I'd like to see from Sean, actually, depending on whether the Blastoise has it or not, is whether it has the option to Fake Out. Because we saw in that first turn, of the last game, we did see the Helping Hand, we did see the Dynamax does nullify Fake Out, but equally you have the opportunity to maybe get the Fake Out off onto the Blastoise, off onto the Whimsicott if they lead the same, and maybe target down the Yveltal without losing Rosation.
Yeah, I like that switch up as well. So I think both players have got a decent few options that they can lead here. And I think a lot of the game depends on actually what they're going to bring to this matchup. Because as you say, if you suddenly bring a Gastrodon to the matchup, Blastoise is really not much of a problem. But as soon as you bring Gastrodon and Sean brings Rillaboom, then suddenly Gastrodon is in a whole world of trouble, which Sean didn't do last time, but may be thinking of doing this time if he thinks Frederik's going to switch it up too. But we see the exact same leads, Ben.
We do indeed. The only difference is that Zacian and Blastoise are in different slots, and I don't know if that's telegraphing anything, but until we work that one out, I think the change up here, the switch up, is whether or not the Thundurus on Sean's side of the field wants to be the one going for that Dynamax. Maybe it's the Blastoise this turn. Frederik very quick to want to target it down, so there's one thing there. Going for its Dynamax, or Gigantamax should I say, would allow it to survive that turn 1 in front of a very aggressive Yveltal. That Cannonade damage, the chip damage that it would get off onto Frederik's team, I think would change an endgame significantly, but also it's better against Burning Jealousy, and it's better against that Incineroar, so it could be a way that Sean has to switch up in this match.
It is, and I think a lot of that depends on whether Frederik does or has brought that Gastrodon indeed. But it would make sense if you think that Thundurus isn't going to be such a great option anymore because of the Burning Jealousy and the Zacian doing so much damage to it, that you may want to leave that at home, focus on a Dynamax or something else. And I think, as you're saying, Ben, that candidate is probably that cannon using Pokemon, Blastoise. But we are seeing a Dynamax right now. I'm not sure which player it is, but if it's the Yveltal, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, it is definitely that Yveltal going into its Dynamax form. So I think the question is will we see a Tailwind or will we see a Helping Hand?
Or a Charm.
Both. Or a Charm, in fact. Yeah, absolutely right. Oh, but we are seeing that Dynamax. You know what? Sean's got his ear defenders on, but we're on the same wavelength here. He's going for that Blastoise, going for the Gigantamax. He is going to be putting a lot of pressure on. I think the other interesting thing here is that if it goes for the Cannonade, or even the Hailstorm if it has access to it, regardless, is going to break that Whimsicott Sash, which I think was really big in the last game. And there it is. There's that Charm, David.
There's the Charm, yeah. So regardless of Tailwind, like, player up is not going to do much damage to the Yveltal now. Darkness does come out, so it's probably going into this Blastoise. Yes, it is. It's going to do over half, as we saw how much it did last time, and does a lot of damage. That's not even like a close to hit KO. That's like an easy one, especially after the special defense drops here. So let's see what this Blastoise goes for. It is the water move, so we don't know what water move that is yet. But setting up the Cannonade can be very nice because even after Blastoise goes down, you still have 4 whole turns of taking an 1/8 of a health out of every Pokemon that Frederik has on the field, as long as it's not a water type. But if there's anything that Frederik wants to field, it's maybe this Gastrodon next turn.
Exactly, and you know, other than the Blastoise, there's not really too much of a reason to run that Gastrodon in this matchup, and I think, yeah, Frederik probably doesn't have too much of a reason to switch it up to that this time. So if that's the case, then a really nice adaptation for Sean. Unfortunately for Sean, the Blastoise has taken so much damage that, as you rightly say, David, the 2-hit KO is definitely there. And you know, that Zacian's got to do a lot of work, even though it's now at 1 stage of decreased attack. And even though there's a lot of progress been made from Sean's side of the field, and that damage is going to rack up, it's going to be really hard for Sean to actually still take a knockout this turn or even next turn, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And now Sean actually goes on the defensive here. Max Guard comes out from the Blastoise. Tailwind gets revealed for Frederik. So this could be, yeah, it's a Max Flare into the Zacian to get up that huge KO there. Yeah, with the Life Orb, that is going absolutely down. And sets the sun up as well. So Blastoise can't even do that much damage with its Cannonade or even change the weather because it's not a Max Geyser.
Yeah, exactly. So the sun's going to be up for probably the rest of the game. We see that damage not being enough to knock out the Whimsicott this turn. That means Whimsicott can land its shenanigans onto the field 1 more turn. And certainly if that's a helping hand, given that what options Sean has available to him with that Tailwind on the field. It could be the Thunderous coming out, but you know, there's a way that Frederik can push through that. There's a Calyrex, but unfortunately it's in front of an Yveltal.
Unfortunately it is, Ben. However, with the Focus Sash, it is going to be able to take 1 hit. So if Frederik wants to take it out, he has to double into it here, and that means Blastoise is able to get up of something of its own. However, with the sun up here, Blastoise need to go for some sort of ice move to be able to take out this Yveltal, and that would also be able to change the weather and hit down Whimsicott with the hail chip as well. So if he's got that ice coverage, I think that's definitely the play from Sean. You may want to go on the defensive here for Calyrex because there's still like 3 more turns of Tailwind left. Plus, Yveltal can go for further airstream, so Frederik is definitely in the driver's seat, but it's still hard to call because Cannonade is still up.
It is, and that Calyrex coming straight back out. Switch up from Sean this time, bringing the Incineroar, not bringing the Thunderous to this game, so leaving Yveltal to be a little bit more threatening on this side of the field. Moonblast coming into that Incineroar, going to be doing a little bit of chip damage, a good quarter of its HP, and the Max Darkness coming out is going to be enough to knock out the Blastoise there. A little bit risky there from Frederik, because if that Thunderous was in the back and it switched in here, it would be getting a 2-stage of attack boost from that Defiant ability.
That'd have been pretty tasty boost, that's for sure. I feel like if you Frederik, it's probably worth the risk because even if you've got, say, like a very high attack stat Thunderous, it's not Dynamax, and that means you've only got Wild Charge, which gives you recoil. You've got your flying move is only a 2-turn move that's a little bit inaccurate, so it's definitely a lot less of a threat if it's not Dynamax. Plus, Frederik has all the control for speed as well. He's got the Zacian, which naturally outspeeds it, and the Tailwind control still on the board because of that Whimsicott, which has now gone down, but it's slowly getting away, and he's still got a few more turns of that Tailwind to go. But now Incineroar does come in, gets the Intimidate, not into the Thunderous, and we're going to see Sean somehow get around this, but there's anything that can take it back, it's maybe an Astral Barraging, like, Thistle on a horse.
Yeah, Calyrex could be able to knock out the Yveltal. The one thing I think that's quite threatening is the opportunity for Fake Out and Oblivion Wing, especially on a Life Orb set from Yveltal. It's going to do a lot of damage. That means it's going to recover a lot of health. Look at that, knocking out the Incineroar in 1 critical hit. I don't know if that was really impactful or not, but either way, it's recovered so much health, and I don't think there's any hope for this Calyrex to be able to knock out the Yveltal now that it's got that Oblivion Wing onto the field.
Yeah, I think from the previous Max Darkness that took out the Blastoise, I think the Incineroar came in then and took a special defense drop.
Yes.
So I don't think the critical hit mattered there. But the Cannonade is still doing its work, but I think unless you've got like a very powerful Mud Shot on this Calyrex, it's not going to do too much into this opposing Incineroar. Plus, Frederik probably has Zacian in the back, just waiting to come in and do work. So it's looking like Frederik is definitely on the up here, but Calyrex Shadow gets a lot of different moves, so it's got the speed potentially too, so who knows what comes out here.
Yeah, and I think, with that Incineroar, the Yveltal on Frederik's side being so low, there's definitely an opportunity for Sean, as he's doing right now, to waste out the Tailwind turns, get that Protect on the field. Will next turn be able to outspeed the Yveltal and, of course, the Incineroar, which naturally it does. Because that Yveltal never went for a max airstream, never boosted its speed, so now relying only on the Whimsicott for speed control does give Sean a little bit of a way back into the game, but that Yveltal has Protect, so it's not going to be this turn that it gets knocked out.
No, it's not. So Ash Barrage is going to come out. Let's see how much it does to this Incineroar. It's probably not going to be a huge amount. 134 health down to the 103. So there's going to be quite a few more of those that need to go down. Snarl comes out. It does hit and does a huge amount of damage for a base 55 power move and gets the special attack drop on this special of this Calyrex. So it's looking like a wrap, but what I found quite interesting is Sean's team is actually very similar to Emilio Forbes' team. He was the winner of the Sorkakus Regional last week. He's just got the Blastoise over the Gastron instead. So his team composition has had some really good success, but obviously Frederik seems to maybe a step ahead of the metagame, and it's brought the Yveltal alongside the Zacian instead of that Calyrex Shadow, which obviously improves your matchup phenomenally into what Sean has brought today.
Yeah, exactly. As the Oblivion Wing goes into that Calyrex, surviving on a sliver, the Yveltal, I believe, will end up going down to the Life Orb. But we won't see it in this battle. We'll just have to picture it happening as we have the winner of round 4. That is Frederik Nielsen taking the 4-0 and moving on to round 5 of the tournament.
Yeah, no achievements for VGC yet, but this may be his first, so it'll be quite the pleasure to be able to be casting his a very successful event so far. Like, we're now halfway through the event because there are 8 rounds in total for this Bremen Regional. So, and being